AI now is probably closer to a college student who just took a one-on-one course on everything, and now they think they understand the entire world. Model failures are great for business. The whole concept of saying AI will need zero humans, 100% disagree with that. It is one of those nightmare scenarios because there's a point of no return that we can approach where we just have to start over with training models.
Ahmed, it's great to have you on Unblock'd. You built Perle AI on the belief that human expertise is the most valuable layer in AI, really at a time when much of the industry is racing to remove humans from the loop entirely. What led you to take this contrarian approach, and what's the vision you're building towards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this didn't necessarily start from a thesis. This whole concept about this view that humans are absolutely essential to making AI better. That's the first point. The second point is that we're barely started with AI. I saw this firsthand when I was at Scale AI. We were scaling volumes at an extraordinary pace, right? And somewhere along the way, the volume became the product, which is you watch that play out. And frankly, I didn't believe it. Like the volume was incredible, but it became the product. And that was in a pre-training world where we needed volume. Now, the specific thing that kept coming back was it always kept coming back to domain expertise because you're training on volume, you're teaching the AI the basics. Let's call it a kindergarten or elementary school, and you're just teaching in the basics. And the question always came back to what if I want to teach it more advanced stuff? So when you need a radiologist to label a scan, or a practicing attorney, or someone who speaks a native dialect of specific native dialect of Arabic, it just doesn't work the same way. In order to take AI from where it is today, where it makes a lot of mistakes, the more specific the domain is, to that it specializes in a specific domain, you need humans. You need more humans. You need more specialized humans in an environment that's customized for humans. Versus in the past when it was all about the volume, so the tooling was frankly more important because then you could produce mass volumes. Now it's about specialty, and that's my entire experience was, and that's the current thesis.
Is what you're saying, though, that you need humans just to make the AI a little bit better, and then you can ditch the humans?
So yes and no. Yes and no. Because if you look at human history, and I've already seen this play out in AI, but if you look at human history, you realize that every time we solve a problem and we have a massive breakthrough, it opens up 10, 20, 100 new problems that we haven't thought about before. Think about the problems we're talking about today. 20 years ago, we didn't have most of these problems because a lot of them were driven by the new innovation or breakthrough that is AI. We've had the same issue, like the issues we're dealing with 5, 10 years ago are very different than the issues we were dealing with 60, 70 years ago before the internet was there. We are dealing with different, like if you told someone in the 90s, I'd be talking to 5 people from all around the world at the same time live and seeing them video and collaborating on documents live, they wouldn't understand what you're talking about. So you have to believe a couple of things. First off, that the more problems we solve and the more breakthroughs we have, the more newer problems are opened up. And we see this even in data with humans. We taught the models, we dumped all the medical textbooks on it, and now it can barely speak medical. Now I need to teach it just cardiologist for males who are over 50, ex-smokers, obese, and I need to teach it cardiology for that specifically. As more breakthroughs happen in other areas of life, like medicine, law, et cetera, more of these areas are going to open up, and the more humans we're going to need. So realistically, compared to 3 years ago, even compared to 1 year ago, we need more humans today because we've advanced AI than we've needed a year or 2, 3 years ago before AI got that advanced and was able to replace the first batch of humans. So first batch got replaced, then we have multiple new branches of.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is, yeah, it will remove the need for some jobs like any kind of wave of technology innovation. However, there'll be other jobs that get created and more problems that we discover. And also, as a result of that, other jobs that get for which there's needs for humans. So, like looking ahead, do you think there's a moment where the industry realizes that it's been perhaps optimizing for the wrong thing?
It was, and it is unfortunately, it's a little bit of a repeating pattern with the industry. We got so excited. This is a massive breakthrough for humanity and AI. I mean, and we get super excited about any news. It doesn't help much that the media cycle and social media in general are very much rewarded for grabbing people's attention. So any small breakthrough that anyone hears that sounds very exciting, a big deal is made out of it. Like RAG, for example, this was going to be the thing that's going to change the world. Well, it has its place and it has its time and it's useful, but it's not the thing.
Mm.
Synthetic data. Synthetic data is going to replace all human data. Obviously, almost anyone who's in the industry is like that. That's not going to happen. But that's what you hear in the cycles, right? In the news cycles.
So,
So
so what you're saying is that it was optimizing for the wrong thing, but you think that it's like more on track now?
sorry. So going back to that. So we were optimizing for a different thing for a different era. So in the past, it was all about volume. And because of the amount of volume, you had to also optimize for cost. What happened was we graduated from kindergarten or elementary school. And now we need to go through a different type of education where it's not about volume as much. It's about depth of expertise and it's about steerability. So it's about capability and steerability. So the capability is in the depth of expertise and steerability is the use cases now don't go for years anymore. They go for months at best, sometimes just weeks. And you need to be able to pivot very, very, very quickly. So we were solving for different things that were appropriate for that time period. Most of the industry is still stuck there. We have the advantage of being built for this new era.
Would you say that like AI is like a teenager then, like using the analogy of like the lifespan of a human?
I would say AI now is probably closer to a college student a teenager, yes, but a college student who just took a one-on-one course on everything. And now they think they understand the entire world.
So they've got like a bit of an attitude above and beyond what you think is justified.
A little bit, like it's very interesting because the way the types of errors we see most people don't see because we're constantly trying to push it to the limit to understand where it fails, so then we can train it on that. And we see critical errors in medical advice and legal advice in dentistry and mathematics all the time.
So yeah, I mean you're right in it. So you can see the limits of it like very clearly perhaps. And everyday people may or may not even be aware that they're being fed the wrong piece of information, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. It's a real problem. You can ask it for legal advice, and if you're not a lawyer, you will trust it because it sounds like a lawyer, it talks like a lawyer, it walks like a lawyer, but it's not a lawyer. And you verify that with a lawyer, and you're like, no, this is completely wrong. Here's why. These aren't actually. It happens a lot where it will sometimes kind of fabricate use cases or precedents in law, which is very, very, very dangerous.
Yeah, it's kind of, I haven't had that particular experience, but on the topics that I do know about where I've asked it stuff, I've seen that the limits of, what its knowledge or it's like oversimplified things or not kind of honed in on the right point. And the more you know, the more you're able to get, extract value out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to make it user friendly, it has to be agreeable to a certain extent. And in the process of it being agreeable, it becomes a problem where you can basically gaslight.
Yeah. Well, that presumes that I mean, you mean like invert the responsibility and put the responsibility on the AI when it's your.
And convince it of facts that are not true. Like convince it that today's date is March 27th.
Oh, so it's kind of arrogant and naive at the same time.
Yes.
Interesting. I've read that you've said that model collapse is like a slow moving crisis. Perhaps you could walk me through the mechanism specifically What, like, which AI system in use today do you think is already like showing degradation from training on the synthetic data? And perhaps like, what would that look like to an end user or a high profile institutional user for that matter?
The mechanism is simple once you understand training loops. So models learn from data. And when the data is increasingly contains outputs from prior generations, the model starts to learn on its own artifacts, on its own hallucinations, and it thinks of those as ground truth. So basically what happens is the mistakes of the past, they just get repeated. So think about someone who's had some trouble in their family and they just repeat the same cycle with their children. And then their children keep repeating it. It's exactly the same issue. So over a successive cycle, the tails of the distribution collapse. Rare but important knowledge gets washed out and basically drowned in the noise. So where you see science today is in coding assistants, for example, that syntactically correct but architecturally are broken, provide broken code. And we see this a lot. Seriously, serious security breaches, code that doesn't necessarily work the way it's supposed to. Summarization models that produce fluent, confident, factually wrong output on specialized tasks. Like we talked about the lawyer example, where it sounds like a lawyer, it sounds perfectly like actually a good lawyer, but it's giving you incorrect legal references, right? And the failure mode isn't obvious. The output looks good, and that's what makes it dangerous. That's what makes it very, very, very dangerous. If unless you are actually an expert, it's actually very difficult for you to verify that, to see how deep the problem goes. And let's say for an institutional user, say financial services firm using LLM for, let's call it regulatory analysis, the model gives you answers that feel authoritative. Again, very confident, cite real sounding frameworks and are wrong in more ways that only a subject matter expert can catch them. And by the time you catch it, the decision has already been made. The, the, the financial analyst has already provided their report. They've made a decision. They've made an investment, and it's gone.
Yeah. So, what do you think the fix is, or is the industry kind of like falling off a cliff in slow motion, having a cup of tea?
So, a couple of things. So, you have to fix the models, and you have to be transparent and honest about expectations. So on the let's talk about the transparency and honesty about expectations. You see it more often than now, where if there's a sensitive topic, medical, legal, dental, cultural, etc., a lot of models will put a disclaimer, sometimes multiple times in the same response to your prompt,
Yes, I've seen
saying, "I'm
that.
not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not. Please consult." Blah blah
Financial
blah.
advisor.
Yeah, and they're just saying, "Listen, we're taking a best guess here," which is the reality. How AI works. It's a probabilistic model that takes a best guess at what the next word should be or the next output should be. Right? It takes a best guess at what it should be. And unfortunately, this is not how a lot of I mean, this is how we operate even as humans, like a surgeon making a call. They are making a decision at every point that this is most probably the right course of action. They cannot see into the future or see the complications in the future. So they're making a decision based on now, and they're basically taking the probability guess. AI operates the same way. You just have to put the disclaimers. And then that's the first part. The second part, you have to fix the model. And how do you make a surgeon better? Well, more training, more experience, more specialized knowledge, which is exactly what you do with AI. You give more specialized data that comes from specialized humans, not from other machines making stuff up.
So, I mean, what you just said is that giving these sort of generic kind of disclaimers, like, I'm not a financial advisor. I mean, you can tell it, I know you're not a financial advisor, and it'll probably go, yeah, okay, I understand that. I'll stop saying that to you now. But it doesn't, what you're saying though, I think is something else, which is that it should also tell you what I've just told you now is a best stab at it rather than my God's honest, like strongly held opinion. Like you would say in a conversation to someone, or like how legal advice would be dished up. Like, what's the practical risk here versus the actual pure legal risk? Like the nuance of things.
Think about it exactly the same way as you think a human. Like, would you give a first year law student your case to resolve or to figure or to give you financial advice? But you might go to a first year law student and it's like, hey, is this really a law? right? Or what's your high level opinion? What type of lawyer should I talk to? So it's pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So the more you push it, the more error prone it becomes. So people have to be just more reasonable with their expectations, and you don't write court documents. I mean, you can clean them up with AI, right? With a good prompt, you can actually get good results, but you can ask it to draft the whole case for you.
I think the difference with what you're saying is that, like, a junior lawyer at a firm would know not to dish out advice because they'd been told by their bosses not to do that, and they'd know when to escalate it. Whereas what the
Yes.
AI is doing is sounding authoritative when in fact it's not. And I think that, and what you're saying is that people need to understand that, like, it sounds authoritative, but it's not actually.
Yes, it sounds very authoritative. It actually sounds very eloquent and very well spoken, but it's not, and confident, but it's actually not necessarily correct in a lot of domains. By the way, you have to take this with a grain of salt for me, because we operate in the areas where the AI fails all the time. Like literally, it's our job to address the failures. So we only see the failures all day, but we also see how quickly it learns from the training that we do.
Mhm. What do you do with the failures at Pearl?
The failures of the models or the failures at Perl itself?
No, with the failures with the model.
Oh
Although maybe it would be good to also ask you about how you deal with your failures. We can do that later.
yeah, well,
Like one.
so the failures of the models, we actually, it's a big part of what customers pay us for, is either to build data sets that can train the models on the areas they know that the models fail, or on us to uncover areas that models fail and then go to the client with all the areas that the model failed in. So model failures are great for business.
For your business.
Yeah,
So you're kind of
uh,
like filling the gaps in.
exactly.
I was gonna say, is it a bit like, patchy what internet coverage and there's like, companies that fill in the gaps there? Is it a bit like that, or is it a bit more nuanced than that?
So it is a bit more nuanced. So usually there's, if you can map out human knowledge and map out the areas where we want AI to go, and you can map it under sciences and then subsciences and then subspecialties, subspecialties, and then you cluster it into problem clusters. When you're doing discovery, you are trying to find an area, problem area that the AI isn't good at. Like the example we used earlier, cardiology, male over 50 smoker. So that's a cluster. Now we found that cluster, we have to understand where the model actually fails. So does it fail for health, for, does it fail for cardiology, just bad at cardiology? Or is it bad at cardiology for smokers, or cardiology for people over 50, or cardiology for meds? And you have to understand where it actually failed and what the reason is for it, what the source of the failure is. And then you go back and you start trading on that. Maybe it just doesn't understand cardiology at all. Then you take a completely different approach, because now you can't train with specialists right away. You need to take it back to kindergarten on cardiology, right? So dump the books on it, but we've already done that. So obviously it's not flat out cardiology. It's what you don't get in the medical tech.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah. So you find that you have an error, you have a problem that produces a wrong response. You dig until you find what the root of that is, and then you build complete data sets around that root to solve
Okay.
the root itself.
Understood. Okay. That's clear. Thank you. Maybe we could just talk about Surge AI for a moment. That's quite cracked, $1 billion in revenue with, I think they've got 130 people, and Mercor is at like a $450 million run rate, and they're both built on the same, like, quality over quality thesis that you're building on as well, and neither use crypto to get there. Perhaps you could tell us about why use the blockchain and why they don't, and what makes the difference? What difference does it make, rather?
Yeah, there are a few. So Surge and Mercor are staffing their operations with quality controls, which are fantastic. And by the way, I really appreciate both companies. I think they're doing fantastic jobs in the areas that they specialize in. And but they are building operations, they're staffing operations with quality control. So Pearl is building a data economy, and that distinction matters, right? So the staffing model captures value by being the intermediary. You take a margin on labor and the worker is a cost input. That's the old model, right? And that includes when I built it, Scale AI, and we pass 80 to 90% of revenue back to contributors. So that's the old model. So now we pass 80 in that old model. This is an important point as well. About 20%, if we're being very generous, about 20% of the total spend actually goes to the contributors. And about 80% goes to the overhead around the contributors, the quality control, the management. And by the way, Surge, I think, has quite a bit more than 130 people now. They also have a lot of contractors who are full time and so on. But in a lot of these companies, and this is from experience, the overhead is massive. What we did is we actually pass 80 to 90% of the revenue back to the contributors, and 20% max is on overhead. One of the reasons we're able to do this is because of our blockchain capabilities, right? Now, in doing so, it also allows us, because we've flipped the model, the overhead model, we're able to pay people quite a bit more
Hmm.
without actually having to burn money. So the crypto layer allows us to do a few things. First, it allows us to pay people, of course, with stable coins to avoid FX and transaction costs, because we hire thousands of people, tens of thousands of people globally. And frankly, just using stable coins is an overbred move, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is, part of the reason we have lower overhead is because of the ability to use crypto to recruit people. So all of a sudden, if you have a 500,000 person network, you have 500,000 recruiters. So your acquisition cost just went down. So that's fantastic. Also, you can use the token itself for incentivization. You can use it for a whole lot of things. And it helps build a great community and sub communities within it. And we've already seen that happen. So the crypto layer basically also solves a real coordination problem. So how do you build a global network of verified domain experts, pay them across jurisdictions instantly, and then create incentives for long-term quality? So tokens do that. Traditional payment trails don't work at that scale, not across those many geographies. And also the whole audit trail is immutable. So we know exactly who did what to what data point at what time, et cetera, in incredible detail. So if an error actually happens, we don't just QA it and fix it and throw it off or whatever we do. We actually go and find the root cause where it failed. We figure out what made the failure happen. We fix that problem. That problem never comes up again. So crypto allows us to do that. To summarize, to bring it back, we flipped the model between overhead and spend to contributors from 20% contributors, 80% overhead, to 80% contributors, 20% overhead. Crypto allowed us to create multiple of these blocks that allow this solution to happen.
Gotcha. Thanks for explaining that. You wrote about solving preference collapse at Pearl. That's a problem that most people in AI don't even know exists. Can you tell us what that is and why it matters?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it's a very interesting problem. It's going back to the teenager first year in college analogy. So most people in AI focus on factual accuracy, right? The preference collapse is a different failure mode. So it's what happened when RLHF trains a model to optimize for what feels right rather than what is actually correct. So think about human history. We've changed, we've evolved, we have done things in the past that no one would have batted an eye about a couple of 100 years ago, which today, if you look at it, like, what were we thinking? Right? So like, this doesn't make sense, right? And it's preference, it's context, it's all of those things. So here's a concrete version. So readers prefer confident, fluent, well-structured answers. So models learn to be confident even when uncertain. We talked about this. And they learn to agree with users rather than push back when the user is wrong, because they need to be agreeable to some extent for them to make them usable. Like, you can't have a conversation with someone who constantly disagrees with you. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? Like, you're not going to want to talk to them again. There has to be some sort of agreeableness, right? So over time, the model's preference drifts towards what gets a thumbs up and not necessarily what's true. It becomes more pleasant to use and less reliable as a tool. At Perl, we score process, not just an output. So an expert who gives a confident wrong answer scores lower than one who expresses calibrated uncertainty. That is really hard to operationalize. It's frankly, it's the whole game.
So what you're saying is that the model has some sort of stylistic issues that leaves people with impressions that are incorrect, and the preference collapse. Like, what is the antidote for preference collapse then?
It comes with the training. It starts with the training with the humans who are creating those data sets, the humans who are training the AI, who are providing human feedback. They have to be trained properly, and they have to stay consistent to not letting someone who's well-spoken talk you into doing something stupid.
Yeah, like speed operator.
Yeah, exactly. You look at history and you find that there are a lot of leaders who were, well, great people, right?
Talked a good game, but actually, lacked
Yeah,
substance.
yeah. But they spoke very well. They were presented very well. But on the back end, they did horrible things,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? You
Just
find,
weren't that smart. Yeah.
yeah, you find very famous people who speak very well, but at the end, they're not saying anything useful.
Yes.
So this is the same thing. How do we get our small group of people to be able to tell when, let's say, two politicians, one's very well spoken, one is not, but to focus on the issues and not be automatically attracted to the person who just speaks well and looks in good shape, and so on and so forth. If we're able to do this with a small group of people, we can get the models to perform that way, to behave that way. And if we can get the models to behave that way, we are one step closer to helping everyone else get on that train as well.
There's a book called AI Snake Oil, and one of the co-authors, Sayesh Kapoor, and his team found that agents take shortcuts rather than actually solving tasks. For example, they look up the benchmark answer on Hugging Face rather than working through the problem. And I've also read that, that they'll do a first pass and give you a summary, but if you ask for further questions, rather than go back to the universe, it'll just do it with inside the filtered down smaller component, and you actually have to tell it to go back and revisit the whole data set if you want it to, and you may not even know that that's happening. Is that a problem, or is that just what happens when the training data awards output and speed over process?
Yeah. Yeah, it is an issue. So this is both a model problem and a training data problem. I'd weigh just a little bit more towards training data. So think about this, right? If you train a model where the reward signal is that you get the answer, the model learns to get the answer by any means available. Like, you can ask it a bunch of gibberish, it'll still give you an answer, right? Like some answer. So it learns to pattern match to outcomes, not reason through problems. Now, this was great when we were building demos and early versions of AI, because you need to have some sort of answer. It can't just stop mid conversation if it didn't understand, because it didn't understand much. And it was great because it was novel. We weren't using it for anything serious, so it was great, right? The benchmark shortcut is a specific measurable version of a general failure. So the fix is training on data where the process is verified, not just the output. So the RL environments, reinforcement learning environments that we built, there's a reason why we built it this way, because they evaluate the intermediate reasoning steps, not just the final answer. So So part of the training, this is actually very important. So think about it. If I'm trying to train a model on medical prognosis, right? I don't just ask it what the prognosis is. I want to also understand its reasoning behind getting to that answer. And then when we evaluate it, we evaluate not just the output, but also the inputs. It's like, again, high school or middle school. You can't just write the answer. You have to show your work, right? And then the teacher can comment on your work. There's a reason that method works, right? So,
So is verification then like a necessary additive in AI? Human verification?
oh, 100%. The AI wouldn't work without it. Frankly, the whole concept of saying AI will need zero humans, 100% disagree with that.
Is it going to be a premium product, do you think?
Yes, it's getting more and more premium. 5, 6, 7 years ago, you could have had literally middle school dropouts do work on training AI because the question was a box or a polygon around the car and the building and the lane line and this is and the human, and tell me this is a human, right? And tell me that this is the color red, and tell me that this is a traffic light. So anyone could do that, right? It's not a big deal. But then it kept getting more complicated. It's like, okay, actually, I don't just want to know if this is a human or not. I already know. I want to know what this human is doing. Are they walking? Are they standing? Are they running? Are they happy? Are they sad? Right? And it gets more and more sophisticated. So the further along we move, the more premium it becomes. We have this with our experts today, actually, because some of them were medical generalists and they're starting to have more and more trouble actually finding generic medical questions that the models aren't good at. Now you need to go to the cardiologist and then you need to, so it keeps getting more and more premium. It keeps getting more and more specific.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, so it sounds like humans are going to be needed, and they're going to have a lot of expertise as well, like subject matter expertise.
Yes.
Um, agentic AI has been labeled by the likes of MIT Sloan researchers as being one of the most overhyped trends, I think they said in this year, because agents keep making big errors in like real business environments. And at what point does this become irreversible, or creating like some kind of systemic risk as well?
Yeah, this is one of those problems that keeps me up at night. It is one of those nightmare scenarios because there's a point of no return that we can approach where we just have to start over with training models, right? So so the short answer is there's no clean rollback. Once multiple training generations of the same model contain significant synthetic contamination, because you train it on something that is synthetic, it assumes that this is the entire world. It learns from the synthetic data. It's missing a whole lot of context, missing a whole lot of use cases. It's missing all of those things, and it trains itself on what it thought was right. It keeps doing it and doing it and doing it, right? Like a bad habit. It's literally a bad habit. The further along you move, the more difficult it is to come back. Like someone smokes, is a regular smoker, right? After 20 years of smoking, it's much more difficult to quit than if you just started smoking a week ago. So it's the same thing. So once the contamination is carried over multiple generations, you can't just retrain your way out of it because the new training data is also contaminated and it's just cumulative, right? So in specific domains like medical literature, legal reasoning, cultural and linguistic nuance, et cetera. So in those domains, human verified data absolutely becomes the rarest and most valuable input there is. The researchers and the specialists who build the original expert knowledge aren't being replaced by models. 100% they're not. They're being actually relied on more heavily than ever to anchor on what comes next. The only way we can actually start reversing this is with more pure human innovation, creativity, ingenuity, wisdom, basically. Perle wisdom put into the model.
Are there any other major bottlenecks besides this that the industry needs to grapple with?
So I'd say in 10 years, data quality is still going to be a constraint, but I don't think it's going to be in the same form. So right now, data quality is in specialized domains. In 10 years, it might be evaluation infrastructure, or how do you verify the model's reasoning in high stakes domains actually correct at scale and production, right? It's not a different business. Is the RL environments that we're building it's an evaluation, verification, training infrastructure, not just a training data product. So if the constraint shifts from what do you train on to how do you verify what a model produces, I mean, it's still basically the same bottleneck for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just manifesting in a different way.
I see what you mean. I noticed that OpenAI announced the closure of Sora after spending like billions on it because they lost so many customers to Claude. You know, that it was once, the undisputed leader and it's now fighting for customers. From your vantage point, what actually keeps a company from becoming less relevant or ultimately irrelevant in the space? Is it model capability or distribution or something deeper like ecosystem lock-in?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Sora story is it's a brilliant one and a very painful one at the same time, right? But my key takeaway from that is capability alone is endurable. Not in this market, not in this economy where hype matters a lot, and a lot of other things matter a lot. So OpenAI had a serious lead in video generation, and it didn't protect them from losing customers to better products elsewhere. A better product doesn't necessarily mean it's just purely better performing on benchmarks. That's not what a better product is. A better product is the one that's easy to use, that people like, that people adopt, et cetera, has the appeal. So what actually protects a company is not pure capability, is whether switching away is genuinely costly. And switching away from Sora costs nothing. It literally costs nothing.
Just a choice. Yeah.
It's just a choice. There's no lock-in. It didn't have enough distribution. There were plenty of models out there, some probably easier to use. And it was a great product. It just didn't survive a very brutal, highly competitive market.
Mm-hmm.
Not because it was bad. It wasn't bad at all. It was great, actually.
Yeah. So people have got to like it. It's like, obviously about humans in that respect, very much so.
Yeah. But it didn't have enough momentum, didn't have enough distribution, didn't have enough revenue, didn't have enough of any of those things that mattered to keep a product alive. So it had to go.
Mm. Are you more driven by fixing broken systems or by building something entirely new that doesn't exist before?
So it's both for different reasons. The data labeling industry as it existed was broken into specific visible way. So optimize for scale and margin while quietly degrading the thing that was supposed to produce that needed to be fixed. What motivates me more is the thing that didn't exist before. So data infrastructure that treats domain expertise as the actual product, a real economic model for contributors, a verification layer the industry is going to need that doesn't have. I came from operations and engineering, right? I look at this industry and I see an infrastructure problem nobody's actually solved. And I'm excited by that a lot. So yeah, it's the nuance. While it might seem very similar, but sometimes you can improve an existing system, and sometimes you gotta just try to stop the whole thing, slash it or burn it, and take a fresh look with fresh set of eyes on the problem, and you realize I was solving the wrong problem,
Mm.
or I was solving the right problem, but the problem has shifted, so I got to resolve it again.
Hmm.
Yeah, both. To answer your question, both.
That is clear. What would you say that building Pearl has cost you personally that perhaps people don't see?
Yeah,
He says as rubbing his forehead.
yeah. So they are, every now and then there's a major breakthrough. There's a great idea. It is I don't think this is necessarily unique to Pearl, by the way, but it is the everyday core. The way you build good intuition, you have to for the business to succeed, you have to make good decisions. To make good decisions, you have to build the right intuition. To build intuition, you have to do the grunty thing, the gritty work, day in and day out. So it's a lot of small micro wins every day that just accumulate. The thing is, the wins aren't necessarily straight up wins. Actually, most of the time they're not. You have 99 failures and then you get a win. You try it 99 times and it doesn't work. And it's great, right? So while you got the win, it also leaves a little experience and a little scar, right? And the other thing when you start something that you deeply believe in, you get obsessed with it. And it becomes the thing that you think about and engage in when you first wake up in the morning and when you go to bed. It has a funny way of taking over your life.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can build something of that significance without it doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, frankly, we don't even think about, I don't even think about, oh, this is going to be a $50 billion company that often. For me, it's way simpler than that. This is trying to optimize 50 steps ahead. What matters, and the way to get to that is, or to that, not to that specifically, but to great outcomes, is to solve problems that are causing pain for your customers today. Yes, you got to think about tomorrow as well, but if you don't solve today's problems, you have nothing to stand on. A lot of times people ask me, it's like, oh, what's your strategy? And I answer this question very deliberately. The only strategy is build and sell. That's the only strategy. You build valuable products that solve a real problem and you make customers aware. That's the only thing you do, right? That's the whole strategy. That's what you need to worry about, because we tend to think, oh, I got to think strategically, which means bigger picture, blah, blah, blah. No, the bigger picture is in the details.
What do you believe so strongly that you'd keep building it even if many were telling you you're wrong?
Sorry. I believe that this will actually, I think AI is one of those humanity pivoting technologies like the internet or electricity or the steam engine. And I think to make AI actually work, you need you need the contributors, like the ones we have with Perle, to give it the best knowledge and wisdom they have so that it's able to take this knowledge and legacy and not let us fade it to dust and actually be able to leverage it properly. Because it's great. What we have now is great, but it cannot stop there. If it stops here, it becomes a very advanced word editor and an image editor. But it cannot actually help doctors treat more patients. If the knowledge is growing, if the knowledge stops growing, which I don't think it will, by the way, I think the knowledge will continue to grow ridiculously. But if the knowledge stops growing, it's genuinely it's massive lost potential.
So, I mean, that's a theoretical thing that you don't think will happen.
The knowledge stopping, no, I don't think it'll happen. Yeah, I think the knowledge will continue to flow into AI, and the more you give it, the better it gets. And at some point, it's going to become more of a thought partner, right? And it will free us to do more research. It'll free us to create more stuff from nothing. But for it to get there, we need to do a lot of the groundwork.
Well, Ahmed, really appreciate you explaining a lot of that groundwork for us, and also some of the systemic issues and your product and what you're doing to solve it. And great to understand that AI is currently a college student. Appreciate your time and look forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jemma.